The year is 1842. Most of the world is still lit by candlelight. The telegraph is the newest miracle of science. And buried in the footnotes of a forgotten mathematics paper, a young woman writes something impossible. She describes machines that could compose music, create art, even think. Not in some distant age, but as an unavoidable destiny. Her name was Ada Lovelace, the woman no one listened to. A century before the first computer existed, she predicted everything. But her vision was ignored, dismissed, and buried for over 100 years. This is the secret history of the world's first programmer, and the prophecy that almost never came true.
Let me take you back to a world that feels impossible to imagine now. 1842, London. Charles Dickens is writing. Queen Victoria rules an empire. And the cutting edge of technology? Steam engines and mechanical looms. The idea of a thinking machine doesn't exist in science. It doesn't exist in philosophy. It barely exists in fiction. And yet, in a translation of an obscure Italian engineering paper, tucked away in a series of notes longer than the paper itself, Ada Lovelace writes about computers the way we talk about them today. She doesn't call them computers, of course. That word won't mean what it means now for another century. She calls them engines, analytical engines. But here's where this story gets truly mysterious. Ada describes something no one had asked her to describe. Something no one else was even thinking about. She writes about a machine that could manipulate symbols, not just numbers, but any symbols, letters, musical notes, anything that could be represented logically. And then she goes further. She writes the world's first computer program, an algorithm to calculate Bernoulli numbers, step-by-step instructions that a machine could follow. But the machine she's writing for? It doesn't exist. It was never built. It exists only in the mind of an eccentric mathematician named Charles Babbage, sketched out in elaborate mechanical drawings that would never see completion in his lifetime. So how does a 26-year-old woman in Victorian England see a future that no one else can see? To understand that, we need to understand who Ada Lovelace really was. And the answer is more complex than any fairy tale about forgotten genius. Ada Byron was born into scandal. Her father was Lord Byron, one of the most famous poets in history. Mad, bad, and dangerous to know, as one lover described him. Her mother, Lady Byron, was a mathematician obsessed with logic, order, and control. They separated when Ada was just 1 month old. She never saw her father again. He died when she was 8, thousands of miles away in Greece, a legend she would spend her whole life trying to understand and escape. Her mother was terrified that Ada had inherited Byron's dangerous imagination, his poetic madness, his wild, ungovernable creativity. So Lady Byron did something unusual for the time. She raised Ada on mathematics, logic, science, as if cold reason could somehow inoculate her daughter against the inherited curse of poetry. It didn't work the way she intended. Instead, Ada developed something remarkable, something no one in her era possessed. She had her father's imagination, tempered by her mother's mathematical discipline. She could dream in logic. By her teenage years, Ada was studying advanced mathematics with some of the greatest minds in Britain. She devoured Euclid, mastered algebra, explored the emerging field of symbolic logic, and she was fascinated by machines. At 17, she met Charles Babbage at a party. He was twice her age, a brilliant but frustrated inventor who had spent years designing mechanical calculators that the British government kept refusing to fund. He showed her his plans for something called the difference engine, a machine that could calculate mathematical tables automatically, eliminating human error. Most people saw a glorified calculator. Ada saw something else entirely. She saw potential, Here's where this mystery deepens. In 1842, an Italian military engineer named Luigi Menabrea wrote a paper about Babbage's newest design, the analytical engine, a more sophisticated machine that could be programmed using punch cards, like the ones used in automated looms. A friend asked Ada to translate the paper from French into English. She did, and then she added her own notes. Notes that ended up being 3 times longer than the original paper. Notes that changed everything. Inside those notes, Ada Lovelace describes concepts that wouldn't be formally recognized for another 100 years. She describes the fundamental principle of modern computing, that machines could manipulate symbols according to rules, and that these symbols didn't have to represent numbers. They could represent anything. She writes, the analytical engine might act upon other things besides number. Supposing, for instance, that the fundamental relations of pitched sounds in the science of harmony and of musical composition were susceptible of such expression and adaptations. The engine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity. Read that again. In 1842, Ada Lovelace is describing artificial creativity, machine-generated music, computer art. She's describing AI, and she goes even further. She makes a distinction that computer scientists would debate for the next century. She argues that machines can only do what we program them to do. They have no capacity for original thought. She writes, the analytical engine has no pretensions whatever to originate anything. It can do whatever we know how to order it to perform. This becomes known as Lady Lovelace's objection, one of the foundational debates in artificial intelligence. Can machines think or only follow instructions? We're still arguing about it today. But here's the truly mysterious part of this story. Almost no one read her work. The analytical engine was never built. Babbage died in obscurity, and Ada's notes were filed away, forgotten, gathering dust in archives. She died at 36, the same age as her father, from cancer, in pain, largely forgotten. Her vision disappeared into history. For the next 100 years, Ada Lovelace's ideas vanished. The Industrial Revolution roared on. Electricity transformed the world. Radio, airplanes, 2 world wars. And slowly, quietly, machines got smarter. In the 1930s, a British mathematician named Alan Turing began thinking about computation in theoretical terms. Could a machine follow logical steps? Could it solve problems? He developed what we now call the Turing machine, a theoretical device that could manipulate symbols on a tape, following programmed instructions. It was the foundation of computer science. And it was exactly what Ada had described 90 years earlier. During World War II, Turing led the team that built machines to break Nazi codes. Real physical computers, made of vacuum tubes and wire, clicking and whirring through calculations faster than any human could. After the war, the computer age began. ENIAC, UNIVAC, machines the size of rooms, processing information, following programs. And gradually, someone noticed something strange. In old archives, buried in footnotes, there was a woman who had described all of this. Before anyone built a computer, before anyone knew what a computer was. In 1953, over a century after her notes were published, Ada Lovelace's work was rediscovered. Computer scientists read her writings and realized she understood programming before programming existed. She had written the first algorithm intended for machine execution. She had predicted the digital age, and she would have been forgotten simply because she was too early, too visionary, and perhaps because she was a woman in an era that didn't take women's intellectual contributions seriously. The hidden truth was finally coming to light. Today, Ada Lovelace is recognized as the world's first computer programmer. The U.S. Department of Defense named a programming language after her, Ada, a language still used in aerospace and defense systems. Ada Lovelace Day is celebrated every October. honoring women in science and technology. And her insights about the nature of computation are still studied, still debated. But here's what makes this story truly extraordinary. Ada didn't just predict the future. She understood something fundamental about the relationship between logic and imagination. She saw that machines could extend human creativity, not replace it. That code was a form of poetry. That mathematics and art weren't opposites. They were partners. In one of her letters, she called herself an analyst and metaphysician. She believed that intuition and imagination were essential to scientific discovery, not obstacles to it. She wrote, "The science of operations, as derived from mathematics more especially, is a science of itself and has its own abstract truth and value." She was describing the beauty of algorithms, the aesthetics of logic. And now, in our age of artificial intelligence, when machines write poetry, generate art, compose music, we're living in the world Ada Lovelace imagined. Every time you ask ChatGPT a question, every time an algorithm recommends a song, every time a neural network recognizes your face or translates a language or beats a human at chess, you're seeing Ada's vision made real. But you're also confronting her question. Are these machines thinking? Or just following very sophisticated instructions? We're still not sure. Here's the thing about buried truths. They don't stay buried forever. Ada Lovelace's story was forgotten for a century. Her contributions were dismissed, overlooked, lost to time, because she was too early, because she was a woman, because the world wasn't ready to hear what she had to say. But the truth has a way of surfacing. Today, we build the machines she dreamed about. We ask the questions she asked. We stand on foundations she laid, even when we don't realize it. And maybe that's the real mystery here. How many other Adas are out there? How many visions have been buried? How many discoveries are waiting in forgotten papers, dismissed ideas, overlooked voices? The story of Ada Lovelace isn't just about the past. It's about what we might be missing right now. The brilliant ideas we're ignoring because they seem too strange, too early, too impossible. It's about the danger of forgetting and the power of remembering. In 1842, a young woman looked into the future and described artificial intelligence. She saw computers when computers didn't exist. She wrote programs for machines that were never built. She was right about everything, and we forgot her for 100 years. Don't let that happen again. This is Buried Truths 2.0, and some mysteries aren't about what we don't know. They're about what we forgot we knew.